Devaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This morning we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 89, verses 13 through to 17. So I'll read the translation here. O King, Brigu then returned to the sacrificial arena of the wise Vedic authorities and described his entire experience to them. Verses 14 to 17. Amazed upon hearing Brigu's account, the sages were freed from all doubts and became convinced that Vishnu is the greatest Lord. From him come peace, fearlessness, the essential principles of religion, detachment from knowledge, the eightfold powers of mystic yoga, and his glorification, which cleanses the mind of all impurities. He is known as a supreme destination for those who are peaceful and equipoised, the selfless, wise saints who have given up all violence. His most dear form is that of pure goodness, and the Brahmanas are his worshipable deities, persons of keen intellect who have attained spiritual peace, worship him without selfish motives. Purport: by becoming devoted to the personality of Godhead, one easily attains divine knowledge and detachment from sense gratification without separate endeavor, as described in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam 11 to 42. Bhakti pareshana bhavo viraktir anyatra chesa trika ekakala prapadya manasya yatanashtu natasyus tushti pushti kshud apaya nu gasham. Devotion, direct experience of the Lord, and detachment from other things. These three occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the same way that pleasure, nourishment, and relief from hunger come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. Similarly, in the first canto, 1-7, Srila Sutta Goswami says, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janadasyasu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yad Ahaitukam. By rendering devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world. Lord Sri Kapila, in his instructions to his mother Devahuti, proposes that the eightfold powers of yoga are also coincidental fruits of devotional service. Because he is completely absorbed in thoughts of me, my devotee does not desire even the highest benediction attainable in the upper planetary systems, including Satyaloka. He does not desire the eightfold mystic perfections obtained by mystic yoga, nor does he desire to be elevated to the kingdom of God. Yet even without desiring them, my devotee enjoys, even in this life, all the offered benedictions. Bhagavatam 3:25-37. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti points out that in text 16, three kinds of transcendentalists are named: Munis, the Shantas, and the Sadhus. These are, in order of increasing importance, persons striving for liberation, those who have obtained liberation, and those who are engaged in pure devotional service to Lord Vishnu. Mama Jnana Tirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. We're born in the darkness of ignorance, and our spiritual masters have opened our eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Therefore, we offer our respectful obeisances to them. So we are into the very end of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is the second to last chapter. Sukadeva Goswami has told us Krishna's story. We have learned how Bhumi appealed to Brahma and then to Vishnu to save the earth. We have learned of Krishna's appearance in Kamsa's prison, of his stealing butter in Gokula, of his herding cows in Brajbhumi, of his killing different demons, lifting Govardhan Hill, dancing with gopis. We have learned of his move to Mathura, where he killed Kamsa, re-established Ugrasen Maharaj upon the throne, fought Jarasandha, defeated him 17 times, and then fled on the 18th to play a nice Leela of being Ranchor, the one who flees from the battle. We've read of his Leela of marrying 16,108 princesses, of his killing demons like Shishupal and Dantavakra, and of his protecting the Pandavas and establishing Yudhisthira Maharaj upon the throne. In these final chapters of the 10th canto, Sukadeva Goswami, if that all of those descriptions haven't convinced us, he is he is reinforcing for us that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. If there is any vestige of remaining doubt on hearing Krishna's glory, Sukadeva Goswami wants to address that. He has described Sanat Kumara and his description of the Vedas describing Krishna's glory even before creation. And this is to reinforce for us that Krishna's glory is not a material phenomenon. It exists prior to the creation of these worlds. We've heard the story of Vrikasura describing why Krishna's devotees may sometimes appear to suffer, while the devotees of the demigods like Shiva might appear to have their desires fulfilled quickly. But Sukadeva Goswami, he reinforces for us, well, that's not in their ultimate interest. Krishna is concerned with his devotees' ultimate interest. He is the Supreme Lord. He doesn't need devotees' offerings and to be in a transactional relationship with him. He is transcendent to such things. And now we have this story of Brigu's test, again establishing Krishna's supremacy over the other gods like Brahma and Shiva. Of course, we've had other accounts in the 10th canto. Brahma Vimohana Lila, his forgetting Krishna's supremacy and his undertaking his own test of Krishna's glory. In the case of Brahma, we've also had Shiva being defeated by Krishna when he came to protect Manasura. But here's another evidence. Brigu has gone out and empirically subjected the three Murtis, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, to his own test. And he's come with a conclusion. So Brigu's empirics is something that we can focus on today. This notion of pratyaksha, or empirical evidence, versus shabda, the authority of hearing. So in the Vedic epistemology, we are given, there are different frameworks, But the most common framework and the one that is appealed to in Vedanta is an epistemology that gives a higher credence to three types of evidence, and then among the three, the highest credence to the evidence of Shabda Praman, or hearing from authority. The other evidences are our empirical observations, pratyaksha, of our senses, and anuman, our mental deduction or inductive process, our the conclusions that we may arrive at through a deductive, inductive process. So Brigu's method is interesting. He's applied this empirical method. We've had the Vedic evidence, the Shabda of the prayers of the personified Vedas. In this final section of the Bhagavatam, prayers of the personified Vedas before creation. They're giving an evidence, the Shabda Brahman. We've also had a hypothesis around the Vrikasura story, why Shiva's devotees might appear to get their desires fulfilled more quickly. They might appear to have more opulence than Krishna's. And we're told, don't think about this seriously. Look at the longer term effects and look at what Krishna's doing for his devotees. He's giving purification, insight, realization, whereas the devotees of the demigods are getting their desires fulfilled, but they remain in the material condition. They continue to suffer. And now this appeal to Pratyaksha in Brigu's test. He's gone about, he's met the three murtis, subjected them to his process of insulting them, and then he's measuring how they react to that. And in putting the three deities through this test, he's seen how Krishna or Vishnu is not affected by the modes of nature, and therefore he's established through his empirical method that Krishna is supreme. Now, usually Prabhupada, he tells us that we can't understand God by experimentation. Says you have to hear from higher authority. Shabda, that is the higher evidence. God is too great to put in your lab. You can subject material elements to your experiments. You can see at what temperature water boils or under what pressure steel will bend. You can subject and manipulate the material elements in different ways in a lab to see how they respond to your experiments. And then we say, God, can you put him in your lab? Can you apply that process to him? No. Therefore, you need to apply a different process, an ascending process of submission and surrender, hearing from, as well as hearing of Krishna's glory from higher authority. That's true. That's an argument that we make in our teaching, in our tradition. Nonetheless, there is a place for pratyaksha, for perception as well, in subordination to Shabda Praman. So we hear from higher authority as our better evidence just because our senses are limited. There are different defects Prabhupada would speak about. Imperfect senses, tendency to make mistakes, we're subject to illusion. Therefore, we can't rely on our senses, we can't rely on our mental induction. That Prabhupada establishes that point frequently, and one of the most wonderful treatments of this is the lecture he gave in Conway Hall in London, where it's a delightful lecture, and that then gets reproduced as Prabhupada's introduction to the Ishopanishad. If you're not familiar with it, go and read it. It's delightful. So we also see some kind of reference or appeal to Pratyaksha Praman in the sage's response. The verses that we're reading today are how the sages reacted when Brigu reported his findings back to the assembly. They had been discussing who is supreme. Brigu said, let me go out and investigate. Here he's reporting the results of the findings of his experiment, his lab experiment, and they're amazed. They're expressing dismay, and there was disagreement among them before. At the beginning of the chapter, the sages are by the Saraswati River, a very ancient river, no longer there in in Bharat, and even at the time of Krishna, the Mahabharata, there is no Saraswati River described. But the older accounts, the older stories have a reference to the Saraswati River, even at Kurukshetra. When you read in the 9th canto, where Pururava meets Urvasi by Kurukshetra, and Kurukshetra is described as being sitting on the banks of the Saraswati River. Today there is no Saraswati. There are 5 lakes that are very famous. And even at the time of Krishna, when he went during the time of the solar eclipse or the Kurukshetra war, there's no reference to a river. Rather, they're going to, during the solar eclipse, they're going to take bath in lakes. So this is a very ancient story, a very, very, very ancient tale, pre-Mahabharata, Kurukshetra war, that epoch. It's a much older time. When this takes place, the sages disagreed on the banks of the Saraswati River, but here they all agree. And they, in their response that we've read today, most wonderful, they say, yes, it is true. What you say, Brigu, is true. From Vishnu, we have seen, comes peace, comes fearlessness. From Vishnu comes the essential principles of Dharma. From Vishnu comes jnana and vairagya, knowledge and detachment. From Vishnu comes the 8-fold powers of yoga. And when we glorify him, our mind is purified of impurities. And we know him as the destination of those who are peaceful and equipoised, the selfless, the saintly. And so here the sages, they are describing, they're glorifying Krishna, but they're also describing their experience of Krishna, of Vishnu. What are the effects of worshiping him? What are the effects of being in his association through seva, through sadhana? All these things come about. Peace, fearlessness, purity, detachment, knowledge. And then in the purport, we have further descriptions along those lines. And Prabhupada would also reference this when Prabhupada was asked. So we can also look to our own lives and see how this applies. We could also apply an empirical method, pratyaksha, perception of our own, through our own senses. What is the effects of devotional service? When Prabhupada was asked, can you perform any miracles? Prabhupada gestured to his disciples and said, yes, here, these devotees are my miracles. They are all miracles. You are all miracles. Every devotee is a miracle. He said previously they were attached to the material nature. Previously they were engaged in all kinds of adharmic activity, attached to meat-eating, gambling, intoxication, illicit sex, and so on. And now through the practice of bhakti, these attachments are no longer there. A transformation has taken place. A purification has taken place. This is nothing less than a miracle. And so in the purport, there is a reference to a verse by the Navayogendras speaking to King Nimi, the 11th canto. They also then describe the effects of bhakti, when you engage in devotional service, three things come about. There's an awakening of so when we come in contact with Krishna, there are three things that take place. One is an awakening of bhakti, of devotion. Two, when we engage in devotional practices, we have a direct experience of God. We have a direct experience of Krishna. I have the privilege of introducing people to kirtan. Um, very often, people, for their very first experience in kirtan, I get to see it. And yeah, so often I see people having an experience of God, um, whether they know to frame it that way, whether they can describe it that way, but there's something profound that happens in the heart. There's a release of anxiety and fear and frustration. There are tears of joy, of love, of release. They'll come to me and tell me something just happened in this chanting. So, yeah, a direct experience of God. We get to see the deity, we get to chant the holy name, we get to hear Bhagavatam. But in this, and as we engage with this and apply it, we get to also see God as we engage with the world, as we engage and interact with others. We get to see Krishna in his creation. We get to see and experience him in our lives. And the third thing described here is a detachment from other things. As we get this taste of devotion and experiencing Krishna, serving Krishna and experiencing Krishna, his presence in our lives, we become detached from the material nature. We can't go back to the normal, so-called normal mode of being in this world as a materialist. The heart has changed. Sometimes devotees also describe this. I try to enjoy the material nature and I can't as I did previously because I have Prabhupada in my ears and I have Krishna in my heart. And so whether after a short time or a long time, everyone always comes back to Krishna's lotus feet. So yes, this is a verse. It's describing tangible experiences of devotional service. And Krishna also appeals to this pratyaksha in his description of transcendental knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita 9.2, very famous verse, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam, Pavitram Paramam Bhavam, Pratyaksham, Pavitram Idam Uttamam, sorry. Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartum Avyayam. He says this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets, and it gives direct perception of the self. Pratyaksha Vagamam Dharmam. It enables you to experience yourself as a spiritual being. It enables you to experience the transcendental phenomenon. And then something else, you susukam, you become happy, you become joyful, and it becomes your constant mode of being. You become changed by it, such that you can't be different, you can't be otherwise. It becomes your general mode of being to see and experience the world through this knowledge, through this teaching, and to be generally in a state of happiness, sukha. Elsewhere, Krishna describes how the devotees glorify him and they tushyanti cha ramanti cha. They are made tushti, they are made peaceful, and ramanti, they experience pleasure. There is happiness and pleasure that comes of this practice of devotional service. There's also the reference where Krishna says, when you experience this devotional service, prasadam abhigachati, you get a higher taste. uh, the higher taste, prasadam. It's not just the food offerings that are made to Radha Muralidhara and then we receive with gratitude as grace, as mercy, but that prasadam is also the experience, the higher taste, that the experience of practicing devotional service, of being in bhakti. When we share Krishna consciousness with others, we can also take two approaches. One is to talk about the negatives of material life, to show people how this material nature and material existence will ultimately, as much as we try to be happy, there's birth, disease, old age, and death. So it's doomed to a failure. That's one way that we might try to convince people to take to Krishna consciousness. But the other way is the positive message that when you engage in bhakti, you will tangibly experience that your life gets better. You will feel more peaceful. You will feel more satisfied, happy. You'll have a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. You'll have a connection with the divine, with Krishna, that brings satisfaction and fulfillment and purpose and meaning in everything that you do. And so that's another way that we can appeal to people, to encourage them to take to bhakti. And so it can be helpful for us to reflect on these things, how our life is tangibly better through the practice of bhakti. Of course, this is a side benefit. We don't emphasize this. One reason why we don't fully emphasize this as our main preaching argument is that we want people to take to bhakti for the sake of bhakti itself. Bhakti is causeless, it doesn't have a material cause. So we want people to be touched by devotion and the devotion itself to drive their practice or stimulate their practice. But yeah, this is also, it has its place, this reference to an empirical experience, tangible experience of the effects of devotional service and devotional practice. So the sages, they are referring to that. They are on hearing Brigu's findings, they say, oh yes, this is true. It is from Vishnu, from service to Vishnu, that we see the arising of peace and fearlessness, dharma, detachment, knowledge. There is a purification that takes place of the mind and heart through engaging in glorifying Him, chanting His holy names. And we also can reflect and see how this applies in our lives as well. Krishna himself references it in the Gita. We can see it in our lives. We can see it in the lives of others as well as we share bhakti. And we can help others to see this as the tangible effects of devotional practice. So I'll conclude there. Any reflections, questions, comments, insights?
Thank you very much, Sri Prahlad Prabhu. A quick question.
Yes.
When a devotee starts thinking that, okay, I'm spiritually nourished, now that I know the process, I know who to hang out with, and I feel spiritually nourished. Now, but my material life still sucks. Let me slow down, let me take it easy with bhakti, and let me now take care of my material situation. And then the devotee starts improving and really engaging with the material world, seeking material well-being, now that he's taken care of spiritually. Is it a wrong turn on the path?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And So two responses. Um, Particularly when a devotee, so there are four stages in life: brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, sannyas. So for somebody who is in the second ashram of householder life, then taking care of a family is not just it's not a, let's say, it is a duty. It is the duty of the grihastha to do this. So it is not a wrong turn, it is a responsibility to do so. Yeah. So brahmachari gurukule vasandanta gurohitan. Prahlad Maharaj says the brahmachari lives in the ashram of the guru and performs seva there, first stage of life, training, foundation, inculcation of devotional principles, service attitude, surrender, but then there's still our conditioned nature to deal with. So the next ashram is to be in the world as a householder, but with a foundation in devotional teaching, service attitude, surrender to Krishna, and then responsibly support and maintain one's family. And there are also facilities that are there in household life. So no, that is not a wrong turn. That is the responsibility of the grihastha. And then the vanaprastha and sannyas, they have other responsibilities. That is to withdraw and then detach and renounce. Now, so that's the first point. Second point is when the devotee engages in the world, um, they're not engaging with the world as others. Um, so they're seeing everything else also as Krishna's arrangement, Krishna's energy, Krishna's mercy. So it's different from the materialist. The devotee engaged in material, so-called material affairs, it is because it is engaged with a different level of consciousness, then the effects are entirely different as well. So yeah, the devotee's seen all of this as service and as Krishna's energy and as Krishna's mercy.
Thank you, Prabhu. Wonderful question and answer. And you answered with the within the context of bhakti culture. You mentioned the four ashramas. Thank you so much for such a wonderful answer. We have men followed by Bhima Kaviraj.
Jai, Min,
Hare Krishna. Thank you so
Haribol.
much for. I have actually a lot of questions came to my mind, but I'll ask one. But before that, I want to tell you that I started reading Padyavali,
Oh, wonderful.
and it's been tremendous. Just really, really inspirational, and I could understand why you said when you read it, you felt like, why would I want any other love, material love, but
Yeah.
this? I understand. It's been really wonderful. So thank you for that recommendation. Um, my question is, at the beginning of the class, you had said that we're nearing this canto, and but still, as if though we've forgotten Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is emphasized again. And in the last month or so, I've been feeling the need to get deeper or more serious about this practice. So one of the things that I've been doing is revisiting or relearning the meanings and the reasons why we chant certain invocation mantras before we read or when I greet the deities at home. So I just wanted to ask this phrase of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, if you could actually speak about that a little bit. Um, we hear it so much, but I'm not sure if I ever asked exactly why Krishna is addressed this way. I mean, knowing that he's a person, but still, I like to ask that. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Min. And I think my last class was on that topic, right? Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that phrase. And the best treatment of this topic you'll find in a book written by Tamal Krishna Maharaj. That was his doctoral thesis. What's it called? Anyone remember the title of that book? It was published posthumously after his departure. But basically, he did his thesis on that phrase, Krishna, the Supreme Personality.
Theology of Krishna Bhakti.
Please repeat that.
The living theology of Krishna Bhakti.
Okay, The Living Theology of Krishna Bhakti by Tamal Krishna Goswami. And he analyzes that in great depth. But so yeah, he has essentially Prabhupada taking a phrase that appear. Oh, there we go. Someone, Amrita Kishore, shared the cover. Thank you for that, Amrita Kishore. So essentially, he has that phrase used by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, but maybe not very frequently. And then you have Prabhupada just taking that phrase and accenting it throughout his teachings. And he analyzes where it derives from and why Prabhupada is emphasizing it as he does. And so he says, Krishna is referred to as Purushottama in the Gita, but that doesn't quite do it. And he brings it back to the verse in the first canto, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, which our acharyas say is the Paribhasa Sutra for the entire Bhagavatam. That verse, they say, is the essential verse through which, it's the lens through which the entire Bhagavatam is to be read. And so Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam, Bhagavan God, Swayam Supreme. And Bhagavan is God with personality, so he's possessing all opulence. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the phrase that you get from that Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. And then Prabhupada emphasizes it throughout his teaching to establish that God is a person, not an abstract energy or just a feeling or nature. There are so many different notions of what or who God is. And in Bhakti Bhagavatam also it says, Vedanti tat tattva vidas, understand God as Brahman, more pervasive, as localized Paramatma, and as Bhagavan, personality. But then personality being the highest, the source of Paramatma, the source of all pervasive Brahman. And so therefore, Prabhupada, as a very clear, emphatic communicator, crystallizing is like profound spiritual teachings in a very concise way, and then repeating his messaging over and again to really simplify complex, nuanced notions, theological ideas into a very essential form that he communicates consistently, and it cuts through. God is a person, and not just a person, the Supreme Person, and he is the source of all that is. And so this wonderful phrase, with this wonderful phrase, Prabhupada just reveals to us and brings home to us that Krishna is the Supreme Person. and the source of all, the Godhead. Um, so yeah, most wonderful. And then other phrases that Prabhupada gives us, back to Godhead is another one that, um, what's the goal? You speak to so many people in different religions, it's not clear what the goal is. And then Prabhupada, he just reinforces for us. And even in bhakti, it's generally more nuanced. The goal is love, and we cultivate love. But then that gets fuzzy again. And Prabhupada just gives us this very simple, memorable phrase, and he calls his magazine Back to Godhead. That's the goal. You need to be cultivating the consciousness, Krishna consciousness, another wonderful phrase. So consciousness of Krishna. Prabhupada has these great phrases that he repeats over and again. And with that, he essentializes abstract theological ideas in a very compact, practical, understandable way that cuts through even to hippies and druggies and whoever we are in this material nature. It's most wonderful. Devotional service is another one. Bhakti also can be abstract, and people like to make it abstract to use it in non-essential ways. Prabhupada says devotion, not just devotion, but active devotional service. And that's how he consistently, repeatedly translates bhakti or speaks of bhakti. So yeah, there's a lesson in teaching and communication there as well from the most successful ambassador, teacher of Vedic teaching, devotional teaching the world has ever seen. And so, Tamal Krishna Maharaj made that the study of his PhD thesis, the living theology. It's living because Prabhupada is bringing it to life through his communication choices of these phrases that he coins and repeats consistently.
Mm. Wow, thank you so much. Jack just brought me the book from
Oh,
the
great. Yeah, perfect. You have a great library there.
Great. It's uh, and it really sort of satisfies something in me that like we hear it so much, and in my simplified mind, like I do feel like, well, maybe one day I'll just know Krishna as a perfect person, and maybe I'll just be different person or in a different relation with Krishna. So
Yeah,
that was really brilliant. Thank you so much.
wonderful. Thank you, Min. All right. Nima Prabhu was next, but we are at 8 o'clock. So
Are you afterglowing with us, Prabhu?
I can, yes.
All right, we'll see you then.
Yeah, okay. Jai. And then we have Narottam Ditai. Okay, Jai Radha Muralidhar. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Radha Muralidhar Ki Jai.
walking across the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My own wish is that my conscience be purified. It opens our eyes to the transcendental knowledge. Begin my Lord, not burning ecstatic, pray my enemies. They have ignorance and such a joy. May the scriptures sing against darkness. Our spiritual master, the ocean mercy, and bring the form and moving master, the Lord. Oh, master, be merciful on us. Give us the shade of the Lord's feet. Give him the farewell of the three worlds. Get the shelter of the Lord's feet. Your Father, Jai, oh God.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai Shri Shri Radha Murlidhar Shri Guru Chandra. Jai Nitai Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Welcome to the Afterglow. Sri Prahlad Prabhu, thank you very much for class and for staying over.
Thank you. I think Bhima Prabhu had a comment, reflection.
Haribo, Prabhu. I
Krishna.
just wanted to, first of all, preface the whole thing that right now, the person who's speaking has a wheelbarrow full of horse manure. So that should give you a little bit of a heads up.
Okay.
This is my dharma. Okay.
Yeah.
So please take everything with a grain of salt. So I am to understand, Ananda Bihari asked about the material life versus the spiritual life. And it was at that point in time when he asked that question, I was going to our peach tree. We have a peach, a pear, and an apple tree, of which the horses take great delight in. And I was going to a peach tree to get a peach in order to feed one of my horses who's lame some medicine, 2 pills that he normally spits out. And that's the here and now of material life. You got to take care of business. You got to take care of those who are those to whom you are responsible for by the grace of God. One would say that marriage and children, Krishna has given you, not like, oh, you should do devotional service and neglect your wife and kid and all the things that you need to do, which means become a success, become an example, uh, reach for posterity so that you can help with the movement. In the old days, devotees had to go out and sell incense and like to make real money for real temples. They had to go out of their way to do various and sundry activities, which was heroic at the time. But now we have something else going on, and that is we have a legion of householders who are regularly giving of themselves a portion of their proceeds in order to sponsor this movement, so that in all the things that we do as householders or even as single people, that there's a chance to, you two calm down. There's a chance to, there's always a chance to remember that Krishna is involved, even within the trivialities of having to go to a peach tree and hide some pills in it and feed it to all the horses because they all get jealous. That Krishna is at work there. That one can step back and not so much have to remember quotes or remember the Vedas, but to have sort of Prabhupada's vision, which was just look at this peach tree. Look at the variety of different fruits that are coming from each tree. And that alone, remembrance of Krishna, is the devotional part of devotional service. That while you're doing your service, that you can wonder and be in awe and reverence of Krishna being present within being the source, the reservoir of the material world, Krishna being the source and reservoir of our good fortune. And that Krishna is present not just in so-called spiritual life. If you have beads, a bead bag on your hand and a shaved head and tilak on, but if you are, have a suit on and you're going off to work, as Madan Gopal does, and yet at the same time here we have an acharya. So that's what I'd like to say in regards to Min's question about supreme personality of Godhead, is the wonder that is, of course, that when you keep animals, you start to if you get to know the animals over years period of time every day, you start to understand each of them have a separate personality, which is wild when you start to realize that these are people, as Prabhupada called them, people. Animals are people. And you start to realize that they have eyes, they have they have desires, they have sadness, they have variety of way in which they handle things in their constitution and their emotions, even their emotions. In understanding such a simple farm realization, one gets to have awe and reverence for Krishna and the idea of personality itself. And then, of course, If you're going to God, the absolute, you have the absolute personality, because it has to come from somewhere. There has to be a source for this idea of individuals. And then, of course, as you were saying, Prabhu, the bhakti that bonds us all together, and how that works is such a wonderful thing, that we have love. We have this thing called love that in this world can be quite confusing. But if we focus our love on that higher taste, as you mentioned, Prabhu, if you focus your love on that higher taste, then even the material world itself becomes spiritual, and it all becomes the spiritual world. At least that's my understanding of what I've watched Prabhupada, and how jolly he was, and how he took things, because obviously he had a direct line of communication, or a vision, like okay, who narrated the Bhagavad Gita to Dhritarashtra? Vidura. Yeah, like a vision, like Vidura. Is this all? Is this? Does this make sense?
It makes sense, Biba Proof. Thank you very much for
Okay, Hare
sharing
Krishna.
your realizations and experiences. Another way we can think about this is with a framework given to us by our acharyas. They describe different types of bhakti. So there is Svarup Siddha Bhakti. These are activities which are directly devotional service, like seeing Radha Muralidhara, singing and dancing before them, reading Bhagavatam, serving the deities, serving the devotees, being in the Dham. These are activities that are inherently saturated with bhakti, shakti, and we can imbibe bhakti through our contact with them. Another type of bhakti our acharyas describe is Sangha Siddha. These are activities that are not inherently devotion, but they become devotionalized through contact with bhakti practice. So, for example, fasting isn't bhakti. But if you fast on Janmashtami and celebrating holidays is bhakti, that fasting becomes a devotional practice. Dancing isn't inherently bhakti, but when you dance in the kirtan, it becomes bhakti. Playing guitar is not inherently bhakti, but when Adipurush Prabhu leads the morning program with his guitar, then that is bhakti practice, that is bhakti playing. So Sangha Siddha, Sangha means association. Some activities become bhakti through association, even though they're not inherently, in and of their own right, bhakti. The third, this is a three-part framework, is Aropa Siddha Bhakti. This is where an activity becomes devotional on account of our dedication or declaration. When someone dedicates a song, this song I dedicate to my mom. So by that declaration that this is an offering towards a certain person or intention or purpose, then the activity is given a certain quality. So the devotee who goes to Ananda Bihari Prabhu's question again, the devotee who goes into the world, they have an intention. I need to live in the world to cultivate devotional service. And so with that intention or declaration, all the worldly activities actually become devotionalized through dedication. The work, the home, the clothes, the vehicle, and anything else that the devotee is engaged with because of that intention or declaration or dedication, in the sense of dedicating something, then those activities are made devotional as well. So these three types of devotional practices, they are all potent, they're all beneficial. And so the so-called going out into the world now is not a wrong turn. It's the application, actually, the application of the teaching and the learning. And it takes a high level of maturity, in a sense, as well, to be able to take, when we're in an environment that is inherently infused with devotion, that's one thing. Yeah, devotional practice is easy there. To be able to be devotional and to maintain that aropa or dedication, intention in the material environment, that takes greater strength. Therefore, we need to keep coming back to recharge with the inherent bhakti practices so that we can do Sangha Siddha Bhakti and Aropa Siddha Bhakti as well. Thank you, Bhima. Prabhu Narottam Nitai.
That's Prabhuji, I have a question and I was wanted to ask you, and the question is just, relating from there's a couple of Srila Prabhupada disciples I'm speaking to here in Michigan, and there's this certain topic that always comes up is how do we get back to the old days where we were, all devotees were chanting for basically the whole day, every day almost. But or just I guess the main question I want to ask is like I have in my mind for like a successful program that there should be Harinam at least once a week, at least one kirtan inside the temple or dham once a week, and like along with the Sunday feast. So I was just curious to know like how can we go on more Harinam in the and I know like in this kind we have this like thing like, oh, you have an idea, amazing, you do it yourself, you implement it and we'll you will follow. So I just wanted to know like how can we like just as a congregation, as devotees, just emphasize that we should perform more kirtan and more harinam, in case we're not, I know many devotees are, but um but I just feel that that's so much needed, and the a whole spring of ideas comes to me like all the time as to what I personally can do and what we can all do as a congregation. I don't even know how to express it, so I just wanted to ask you.
Jai, Narottam Nitai Prabhu. It's wonderful to hear that you're taxing your brain with how to share Krishna consciousness with the world. That is a wonderful quality, and I will say it is a quality that we inherit in the legacy that we received from Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But it is a unique, I think, also quality of Prabhupada's followers. Somehow this carries through in the DNA of Prabhupada's followers, that they want to share Krishna consciousness, and at all levels in our communities, in our society, we have devotees thinking about this, meditating on this, taking different initiatives. And so that's wonderful to hear that you are anxious for how to share Krishna consciousness in your community. And so that's a great thing. Even that is glorious. Whatever comes from it is glorious, but even that has an intention and a concern and an anxiety. It is wonderful, and it shows that you're connected in the flow of Prabhupada's mercy and the kripa that flows through his teachings and through his disciples and followers. In terms of the practicalities, we do what we can. And if you're sharing ideas and others are not picking them up, then we'll take a phrase from Gandhi, who said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." And so you also reference that. And so if it means starting small, even in your home, that you invite a few people over for kirtan there, or if you can't get them for kirtan, invite them for prasadam and then have kirtan. You can change them up. And then as you build that culture, then you might say, hey, how about we take this outside. We go and sit on the lawn or in the park. Chatting in the park is also nice. Go for a picnic, invite friends for a picnic, and then bring out the kartals and have a little chanting there as well. And as that becomes a culture, then you might entice them to somewhere on the sidewalk or something of that nature. So maybe you could strategize in that way. Prasadam is a good pull. Yeah, find the way. Find the
Yeah,
way.
my father, since we're coming from an Indian background, my father does a certain pujas at people's houses, and then he takes Sri Prabhupada's books. but yeah, no, there's a I've yeah, I'll think about this more, Prabhuji. I feel there's a lot of weight on my shoulders of carrying my own tradition along with Sri Prabhupada, so there's a lot, going with me. Hare Krishna.
Sure. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Thank you, Sri Prahlad Prabhu. I'm looking at Adipusha Prabhu and he's glowing. Adipusha Prabhu, why are you glowing?
I'm just basking in the wisdom and the sincerity of Sri Prahlad. Very nice. No problem. How wonderful is Krishna? Yeah, Krishna, you were asking your usual question about the other life besides your devotional service. And Prabhu explained very carefully that it's all devotional service. Some people are called to serve in the sannyas ashram, some people are called to serve in the householder ashram. So, be a good householder. Be a Krishna conscious householder. Make the deity the proprietor and the center of your home. Um, invite others, share. And what's his name? Jai Jagannath gave this amazing class about the different sacrifices connected to the different ashrams. And when he got to the householder ashram, I had never heard this explained so nicely before. He said, there are sacrifices connected with this ashram. They must do yajna, some kind of worship, and they must give charity. And a householder who does not receive a guest in his house is an animal. It was like, wow, that was so heavy. And a householder, part of one of the sacrifices the householder performs is to bring children in the world and raise them in a Krishna conscious way. That's a big sacrifice. The hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. Where would we be without Prabhupada's mother and father? So there are Krishna conscious activities of the householder, and it will expand like anybody's service. Krishna will show us how to increase those sacrifices, improve them. And Prabhu was asking about Harinam. Sri Prahlad explained very simply, yeah, do it. At one time it was part of my prescribed duty to go out at least a little bit each day. I would walk out in front of the Bhakti Center, right in front of the door by the restaurant opening. I put out a blanket, mridanga, another little blanket on the cement with some books. I would play the mridanga a little bit, and people were walking by, and again and again and again, someone would stop. I'd say Hare Krishna, I'd stop playing, and sometimes I'd walk them in and show them the deities, and sometimes give them a book, and sometimes just introduce them myself to them and hear about what they're doing. And it's pretty natural. It's as simple as breathing. It doesn't have to be a massive amount of thousands of devotees rollicking through the streets. Sit down, chant Hare Krishna with the mridanga or cartels, and a few books. A blanket. That's all you need is the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Bhima Prabhu, if you would see that, would you become a devotee?
That's what happened to me, unfortunately. I was walking across the Ohio University College Green, and Radhanath Maharaj, alone with his harmonium, which is something that is a sight to see and a pleasure to hear, wafting over the breeze. He's all alone and he's crooning. You could tell it was a love song. He was singing one of the many songs that's in the Vaishnav canon. Of course, I don't remember what it was, but I do remember the name Radha being in that song. But I had never met Radhanath Maharaj before. I hadn't yet gone to the Wednesday feast, which he invited me to when I went over to see what he was up to. And it was at a great time because I had just taken my first class in religious studies, comparative religion, and then we were studying mysticism or devotional religion, which would be the Sufis, the dancing Sufis, and we were the mystics of like Saint Teresa of Avila, Saint John of the Cross. So all this was culminating, and then the next thing I know, and I was like very, very much affected by that. Being a philosophy minor, I was just like, oh my God, there's a whole nother world that people who are serious, good writers, beautiful writers, and sincere in their sentiment about their expressed devotion towards towards God, and is God one, and is the Sufis. So all these things were teeming in my head, and then all of a sudden, Krishna will send somebody like Adi on a sidewalk or Radhanath Maharaj on the green, simply chanting Hare Krishna, and you're kind of hooked. You're mesmerized into it. It's nectar. You don't know what you're feeling. And next thing you know, I was kneeling like on my haunches, like a catcher, a few feet away from Maharaj. And he wasn't doing it for attention. He was faced away from the crowd. Believe it or not, the sidewalk. He was faced away from the sidewalk, so it wasn't like he was soliciting. And I sat down and listened. And after he went through the whole thing, my first words ever to Maharaj was, "Teach me the secrets of mystic power," because at that time, I saw that these saints had powers. I was not interested in anything about goodness or purity or love of God. All I knew is that some of them had mystic powers, and that they were loath to show them. And I saw Maharaj, and I instantly got an idea that if anybody's going to know, it's this one. I can tell it in his voice and how he's singing. And so thus ends the story of my material life in regards to being totally ignorant of what else is going on behind the scenes. And that was due to the simple display of Sankirtan by a lone devotee in the middle of the green, in the middle of a state, in the middle of the world, and I just happened to be passing by. So it is very valuable that we go out there and we, with all our heart, whether we can sing or not, if we sing it with heart, then people are going to pick up on it, and Krishna's going to lead you to them. And the next thing you know, you got a whole nother journey you're going on. So yes, I agree. That's how it happens. Hare Krishna.
Well, what a great story. You're muted, Ananda Vihari Prabhu.
Sri Prahlad Prabhu, a quick question. How did Srila Prabhupada start his kirtans in Tompkins Square Park? Was he alone when he first started with a handful of followers?
Prabhupada had been telling the devotees to go out and chant on the street. So they were doing kirtan at 26 Second Avenue. Prabhupada was telling the devotees to take it out. And I was reading that in the Hare Krishna Explosion by Harigrava Prabhu. And they were very hesitant and reluctant, like self-conscious. They were hippies, yet they were self-conscious about taking the chanting onto the street. And Prabhupada kept insisting. And so then one day, he had them all march out there, put out a blanket, and then the miracle happened.
And we're all here because of that blanket. That's the
Yeah.
sail into the spiritual world. The wind blows into the sail, and the boat is taking us where we want to be in devotional service. Thank you, Sri Prahlad Prabhu. Wonderful class. Nityananda Chandra Prabhu, can you unmute yourself and recite the Maha Mantra to complete the offering?
Yes, I was just thinking how it's so amazing how much footage we have of Prabhupada from those early days. Like that, just the idea that we should record this. There's so much, it's more than you would expect of Prabhupada and 22nd Avenue and going out the Harinam, doing that insight, Krishna's inspiration, the recording.
All
Yeah.
glories to the... Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you, Nityananda Chandra Prabhu. You should have rolled your window down before reciting. Have to do it publicly. Okay, we love you. We need you. Thank you very much for your association. Sri Prahlad Prabhu, thank you for class, as always. Dear devotees, come again tomorrow. You are our accountability, our inspiration. Thank you very much.